It's lying season, but it sounds like the Denver Broncos are going to be aggressive and moving up in the NFL draft. We'll break it down on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the big reports coming out about the NFL draft. Some veterans that could be on the move, like Jameson Williams from the Detroit Lions. We'll talk about some teams that might move up to get Ashton Jeanty, like Lauren Cox's Chicago Bears. But we got to start with the Denver Broncos, who seem like they might be one of the most aggressive teams in the NFL draft in terms of moving up. Before we dive in, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. But again, big-time report dropped by ESPN's Adam Schefter on Monday talking about different things revolving around the NFL draft. And one of the biggest things that stood out to me was a couple of teams that look like they could be moving up. Lauren, we've heard a ton about teams moving down in this draft class, but that always requires a team to move up, and it doesn't seem like there's a big surplus of teams looking to take that step forward. But the Broncos, who could be looking for a playmaker, whether a tight end or running back, and then the Saints, who could be looking for a quarterback, but maybe not early, were the two teams that we heard. Do either of those teams surprise you as teams that could be looking to get aggressive here?
Yeah, the Broncos especially, because this is a draft class where there's a lot of wide receivers to like, and a lot of running backs to like, and a lot of tight ends to like, and like unless you're moving into the top 10, from 20, that's a huge leap. Otherwise, like, what do you got to move up for? There should be guys that you can still like where you're picking now at 20.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the Broncos moving up, I agree with you. Depending on what position they're looking for, it would make sense to wait. But when it comes to the two positions that we're hearing about the most for them, running back and tight end, you look at Ashton Jeanty, he's clearly a tier above, and then you look at the tight ends, and it seems like the two at the top, Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, are guys that, are maybe a tier above anybody else. So it makes sense that that's guys that the Broncos are looking at. They have a pretty good roster. They have their quarterback. They can take some of these luxury positions, and my guys over at Locked On Broncos talked about a potential move up for the Broncos in the draft.
I think if you're going to trade up, there's a very select few players that would make sense to do it for. Ashton Jeanty would be one. Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, they would qualify as others. This draft just doesn't have very many blue chip types of guys. What's a blue chip type of guy? A blue chip guy is somebody that you feel can be a foundational piece to your franchise, somebody who scores well higher above in every metric than other players on your draft board. They check out character-wise, they check out talent-wise, production, injury, all these sorts of things. That's what makes them blue chip. They are ultra talented and could be potentially elite players at their position. I do believe Colston Loveland has that potential, Cody. Of course, the signing of Evan Ingram means that this is it's a spicy take for us to react to, because our good friend Mike Kliss, although it was right after the signing and things like that, he pretty much said tight end in round one is off the board for the Broncos. Now, is that really the case? Is that what they wanted him to say? Is that just something that they want floated out there? You never know what to actually believe in the draft nowadays, but to give up draft capital to get those, let's just put it this way. If the Broncos draft started off with Colston Loveland and Travion Henderson, I don't know that anybody's going to be mad about it, right? Those two guys could be big-time weapons for Bo Nix now and into the future.
I agree with the overall plan. And like I said, the Broncos are a team with a pretty good roster, quarterback. They could make a move up. But the signing of Evan Ingram is something that I do point at. And the Broncos are a team that last year they were we had everybody fooled. Were we coming up? No, we were able to do this and that to get Bo Nix. The Broncos just seem like a team that's willing to help other people send a message. You know what I mean? Like the teams play the game. Hey, I give you information, you give me information. That's how this media relationship world works. I think the Broncos are a team that would willingly be like, hey, and Schefter does have history with the Broncos. Hey, there's not a lot of juice. We need to kind of juice things up. Can I say you guys are looking to trade up here? And that can kind of be something that people like us talk about on podcasts. You know what I mean? Like it just helps the entire machine. I don't know that I buy that the Broncos are going to make some big move up for a non-premium position like tight end or running back. I just don't know if I buy that.
Yeah, like it makes sense in the sense of like the idea of wanting to maximize Bo Nix on the rookie contract and get him into stuff, but the amount they'd have to move, right? Like if you're trying to get up into the top 10,
exactly.
You're giving a future first round pick to go from 20 to the top 10 there at plus additional picks. So like it's not like Denver is swimming in these extra draft picks. You say, well, that's a team who has to unload some picks and move up just because they're not going to be able to sign that many rookies. Whereas like the team 2 picks before them, the Seahawks have, extra second, extra third round pick. Like there's some teams that make more sense as like they have ammunition, but the Broncos, it's kind of a convenient, like, oh yeah, that's a team that maybe could like one of these players, but not really something you're gung-ho about.
Yeah, it makes sense just enough for you to contemplate it. But when you start to look at their draft capital, again, like you said, they have 51, they have 85, then they have 122. They're a team with 7 draft picks. It's not like they have a ton of draft capital to play with here and to use a ton of that to move up for a tight end or a running back in a class that has good tight ends and running backs. It's just something I'm not 100% sure about. One thing that I am 100% sure about is I do think that the New Orleans Saints are going to be aggressive moving up for a quarterback, but not in round 1. I think it would be moving up from round 2, whether it be to the beginning of round 2, whether it more likely be to the end of round 1. And on a recent New Orleans Saints squad show led by the mastermind, Ross Jackson, they talked about that.
There's no reason for the New Orleans Saints to trade up from 9. I think the New Orleans Saints should go the route of trading up from the second round, not trading up in the first round.
And to your point, we just learned Monday morning, not that we should be shocked, the Saints are already having exploratory calls of trading up in the second round from Adam Schefter. Yep. And so, look, they're going to be calling all week. That's not really going to be that big of a surprise. But I'm with you, Ross. I don't think that the Saints – I know you want to go get your guy, but looking at what this team needs and the fact that you have 6 picks within the top 150 and the amount of needs you need on this roster right now, look, I think they can get a quarterback that they like, right? I just feel like that's where that's going to happen. But if you want to trade up a few spots, if you ever look at Jimmy Johnson's draft chart, the pick calculator and the value there, I think going up even a couple of spots is going to cost you a lot. And so I'd like to see him wait. I think they can still get their guy. It just depends on if they feel like their guy is going to be there.
Well, I don't think that their guy is going to be there at 40. I think all reports indicate that they love Jackson Dart, whether it be Jackson Dart, whether it be Shadur Sanders, whether it be Jalen Milroe. I don't think that they're going to be able to wait around until 40. So I think the Saints, more than any, if I had to make a prediction with my life on the line to say who trades up for a quarterback in the NFL draft this year, I think the Saints come back into round 1 to get their guy, especially with the Browns and the Giants being at 33 and 34. They may not necessarily need to.
That's the thing that's always confusing for me with quarterbacks in the draft like this. Is like if you're the New Orleans Saints and you love Jackson Dart and if you think this player can be a franchise quarterback for you, then take him at 9. Like if this is the quarterback position we're talking about here, this isn't like, oh, this is a receiver we'd sure like to have. So, maybe we'll trade up and hopefully we can get him late in the draft. No, is this your franchise quarterback? Then take him when you have a pick. And I know, like, if he's as good as you think he can be, he'll be worth the 9th pick, even if maybe, that's a reach or whatever. Like, do you have confidence in him as a quarterback? Or do you say, well, we kind of like him, so we'll wait and let other teams maybe take him from us? Because, not a big deal if we miss out. Do you think he's a franchise quarterback or not? Like, that's what I want to know.
Yeah. No, you know what it always reminds me of? The Baltimore Ravens took Hayden Hurst over Lamar Jackson. Think about that. So, like, logically, I agree with you, and I had been pushing that all season for the Titans, too. Like, you don't entertain trade offers for a quarterback if you think that he's worth the number 1 pick. Like, you can't take a guy number 1 who you'd be willing to trade. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But over and over and over again, it seems like NFL teams really do want to have their cake and eat it too. But with that being said, let's talk about another team that might move up that Lauren might know something about. The Bears. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There is nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena. And with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer. And their last-minute deals could save you up to 60%. Here's why I love Game Time. Again, you get the last-minute deal saving up to 60%, but you also get great features like all-in pricing at checkout. You get panoramic views from your seat, and you get the Game Time guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We are just a couple of days away from the NFL draft. We've talked about the Denver Broncos and the New Orleans Saints potentially moving up in the draft. But now I want to talk about Ashton Jeanty, because we talk about quarterbacks, talk about tight ends, but Jeanty is a guy that is starting to get that trade buzz around him, and especially number 5, the Jacksonville Jaguars, starting to hear little whispers and things that the Jags might be interested in taking Jeanty, but maybe the Bears, maybe the Dallas Cowboys at number 12, maybe they would be interested in coming up and getting a guy like Ashton Jeanty, who, again, like Sayer Benninger mentioned with the Denver Broncos, there are only a couple of blue chip guys in this class. Ashton Jeanty clearly being one of them. Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, maybe one of the tight ends if you want to throw them in there. Lauren, as a guy who covers a team who's been rumored to be super in love with Ashton Jeanty, Schefter reported that the Bears are praying that Jeanty will drop to number 10. Number 1, would you think it would be wise for the Bears to move up to number 5 and take Jeanty? And number 2, what would your reaction be if they did it?
Yeah, so I think the Bears are a strong team to trade up. I'm not convinced it's for Jeanty, though. I think they are interested in moving up for Mason Graham from Michigan. I think they love Mason Graham from Michigan. If he gets past the Jaguars at 5, I think that's a player they would trade up for. I don't see them as likely to trade up for Jeanty specifically. If Genty's there at 10, they might take him. But because I think back to when Ben Johnson's Detroit Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs number 12, right?
Yes.
And that's everyone saying, oh, the Bears might take Jeanty to get Ben Johnson's version of Gibbs. Do you remember in that draft, the Lions traded down and took Gibbs? They were picking in the top, I think that with the 6th pick, and they traded down to 12. And then after moving down, they said, sure, we'll take Jahmyr Gibbs. He's our best player available. So like even with the Gibbs pick, it wasn't like, oh, we got to get everything we can to go get this guy. It was, well, he's the best player available and we'll take him and we like him. And I think that's how the Bears are going to approach this with Jeanty and not give up second round pick and more to move up into the top 5 to take a running back. I don't think it's very likely, and I don't think it's a great use of resources there to put that much into one running back.
I 100% agree. Okay, maybe I should have framed the entire show like this, but like if we're doing like buy or sell on some of these reports that we're discussing, I am sell on the idea of the Bears or the Cowboys trading up to 5 to get Jeanty. Like, I just simply do not buy it. Like you said, it's one thing if the running back falls to you, and then the conversation is it worth it to take a running back in the first round? Well, okay, in this draft class, certain talents, certain team compositions, and where you're at in your team building process, yes, it can. But the conversation changes totally when you talk about trading up. And if you're going from 10 to 5, you might have to give up a next year's first round pick. And I'm sure in the building in Chicago, they're saying, hey, we're going to be a good team this year. We just got Ben Johnson. We're winning games. We're going to be in the 20s. So what if we give up one of our, a first round pick next year? It's not like we're giving up one of the picks that we've had over the last few years in the top 10. It's not going to be like that. Well, that's all great. You can tell yourself that, but you simply don't know. You don't know. I mean, who knows? Ben Johnson could be the next Pope. Like, you just don't know what can happen in life. So I'm sorry. It's one thing to sit at 10 and take a running back when the conversation is, should running backs go in the first round? But the idea that the Bears would give up draft capital to move up 5 picks in the top 10, give up a future first round pick to get a running back, that's where I draw the line on. No way, man. Like, I just don't see it.
I think the only wild card there is Jerry Jones, right? I mean, you said it wouldn't make sense. It's not, it doesn't seem like a good idea to do so, but that hasn't always been the rationale Jerry Jones has used. It's not, is this a good idea? It's, is this exciting? Will it sell tickets? Does it give us attention? And
well, they need it, man. And I mean, the Cowboys, more than any team, like we've talked about this all season, they are boring.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Could this be the splash move for him? But like, I was just looking back, I can't find a modern example of a team trading up to take a running back, like in the top, at the very top of the draft. Like Ezekiel Elliott at 4, they picked right there. McCaffrey at 8, they stayed right there. Barkley at 2. Like all the teams that took running back super early in the draft stayed where they were to do so. I mean, we haven't had a modern example of like a
we
team.
would have to go back far. Like Ricky Williams is one that comes to the top. I know there has to be one before that, you know what I mean, in between, but it hasn't been in a while.
Yeah. Trent Richardson, I mean, everyone, every pick in the top 10 of running backs was teams that just stood there and take it. Like, as much as maybe teams are debating the value of running back, I don't know that any team is saying we got to go up and get a running back, even in a draft class like this, that there aren't that many blue chip prospects. I think they look at it and say, well, there's plenty of other running backs we like though. And even the Bears running backs coach has said he's got multiple backs in this class he's really excited about. So I can't see them saying, well, then we got to make sure we have to get Jeanty. No, you can be perfectly happy with any of 10 other running backs in this draft class at a minimum.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's a strong running back class, and that'll factor in. That's why the jump from, hey, we're taking a running back top 10 to, hey, we're trading up in the top 10 for a running back is a jump that I can't go. Lauren, just why have you on? Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren? If they're both there at 10, where do you think the Bears go?
You know, it's funny because Colston Loveland gets a lot of pre-draft comps to Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions, who Ben Johnson took in that same Jahmyr Gibbs draft class in 2020.
Juice is a pass catcher for sure.
Surprised me if the Bears really liked Colston Loveland. We have heard Ben Johnson rave about Tyler Warren specifically when he was asked, but I always kind of throw up a red flag or like a raised eyebrow whenever you have a coach in the pre-draft process talk specifically great about a player. That's usually not a player they're really interested in taking, because why would you rave about a player for 2 minutes straight if you didn't want other teams to, if you're trying to hide your interest, you're not going to say, oh, Tyler Warren is a wildcat quarterback. There's so many fun things we could do with him in our offense. Like that to me was the Bears saying, we're not going to take Tyler Warren. But like, the opposite of what they actually said. But, you know, read between the lines, they raved about him for a reason. And I don't think they're really interested.
Well, that's interesting too, because it makes me think of a quote that I saw from, I don't know if it was, I think it was James Gladstone, the general manager of Jacksonville, but I don't want to attribute directly. It was the coach or the GM, Liam Cohen, one of the two, but it was talking about, we want touchdowns. Like, we want touchdowns. And people are like, oh, Tetaroa McMillan, maybe that's what Jacksonville wants to do. Pair him with BTJ. You know, they're going to get rid of Gabe Davis, this and that. Ashton Jeanty, oh, they're going out. That's a touchdown maker. Maybe they trade back for one of the tight ends, stuff like that. And I'm just like, it seems too obvious. And then it goes back to what you said earlier of, oh, I think the Bears would go up for Mason Graham. And I'm just starting to get this feeling that the Bears, tight end, running back, you know, could we see tight end go to the Saints? Could they double down there? The Panthers could take Tetaroa McMillan if he's there. And then it's going to be Will Campbell, Armand Membo, Kelvin Banks, Mason Graham, Mikael Williams, Jalen Walker. Like, it's not going to be what we think in that realm. I think those guys. So Mason Graham is a guy that I'm looking at, and it's like everybody's acting like they want the running backs and the tight ends and all that. But Mason Graham, you identified as, oh, I think the Bears would actually want him. Mason Graham was the guy that's been with the Jaguars the most throughout the process. I think they're trying to get somebody to trade up for Jeanty. Really, they're going to take Mason Graham. I'm not going to be fooled by that rumor.
Yeah, this to me feels like the classic, like last minute draft smokescreen stuff where now we overthink it and now we're giving the Raiders a running back, we're giving the Jaguars a running back, we're going all over the place. When we'll kind of come back to the reality of like, we probably know the first 5 picks are probably going to be, Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, and then the draft starts with the Raiders at 6, which is kind of what we've been thinking it would be all along anyway.
Yep. And that's no fun. So it would make sense that someone that's a partner with the league in that way would be like, hey, actually, things are super juicy at pick number 5. We don't know how things are going to go, blah, blah, blah. So, well, listen, we talked about Q before the show. Tremendous voice from your boy Q from Locked On Raiders. He's got a little lesson for us as we talk about some veterans who, it's one thing when there are no consequences with these rumors, but you start floating a veteran trade out there, and that could impact some things, which gives them a little more credence. And we got an interesting one on Monday. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Wait, what do I mean? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with a Fire TV Stick 4K device, no console required. That's right. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. You could dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Also, while you stream your favorite TV shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. You get Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. And again, do you really want to lug around your Xbox everywhere you go? Wouldn't it be easier to just bring your Fire TV Stick 4K device? Well, now you can. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL, looking at some draft rumors, kind of playing a little buy or sell here and what we think is real and not real. And I got to tell you, Lauren, one of the things that came out of all the reports on Monday that I do think is real is some of these veteran names that are being floated. And the one that stood out the most to me came from a report from Albert Breer. He said Jameson Williams, the wide receiver from the Detroit Lions, and Kayvon Thibodeaux, the edge rusher from the New York Jets. And the one thing that both those guys have in common is they have a 5th-year option due. And both those teams may be considering not paying those guys. You look at the Giants, Abdul Carter could be their pick at number 3. They traded for Brian Burns. So do you really want to pay Kayvon Thibodeaux as well if that's what your plan is? Obviously, the Detroit Lions are going to be in a prime spot to draft another wide receiver at the back end of the first round, maybe a Luther Burden, maybe an Emeka Egbuka. Maybe the Lions make a move up for a Tetairoa McMillan or something like that. They're definitely in a position to take a guy in that realm. Do you think we see either Kayvon Thibodeaux or Jameson Williams actually traded over draft weekend?
I think Thibodeaux is easier to believe for me than Jameson Williams, even though
I agree.
Williams has the sort of off-field question marks that linger, and you can kind of talk yourself into, well, maybe you just want to stop dealing with that. But like the Lions don't have much else at wide receiver. They're still in this trying to win a Super Bowl window right now, and they've only had one real season of Jameson Williams. And he was a 1,000-yard guy, the one fully healthy, non-suspended season in that offense. He looked pretty darn good and like something they had been missing on offense. So I think it's way too early for them to want to get rid of Jameson Williams, and trading him now as opposed to the deadline isn't going to be maximizing the value. But I think Thibodeaux is the one that's a little bit easier to talk yourself into because the Giants have already paid Brian Burns. If they get Abdul Carter there at 3, you can start to find your way to say, hey, they just can't afford to have all these great pass rushers at cost there. And this is not a team that's entering their Super Bowl window. I know they're like fighting for their jobs in terms of the coaching staff and the GM, but like no one outside of that building thinks they're going to be a major contender this season. So it's not like, oh, you got to load up and keep all your pass rushers in here to make that one big push this season. If somebody gave them some good value, say, hey, long-term future with an extra draft pick there, I think that's a little easier to believe.
No, I agree 100%. I think Kayvon Thibodeaux is drafted. I would go that far. Like I'm going to say my bold is traded. My bold prediction is he is traded because I do think that Abdul Carter will be the pick for the Giants at number 3. So it only makes sense. And especially this is a pretty good edge rusher class. But I think you get to the midpoint of day 2, you start to get into the Ashton Jeanty, the Savion Jones, David Walker out of Central Arkansas, like guys like that who I think are like the 4th tier of rushers, kind of after the Femi Oladejos of the world, or the Braden Swinsons of the world, kind of that that back end of tier 2, or if you want to call it the tier 3 rushers, that's what I would say. You're going to get into that area. And I think it would be likely that a team would give up a 3rd round pick for a Kayvon Thibodeau. You know, if you have a late 3rd round pick around 90, 95, 99, you want to secure an edge rusher that you think can actually impact your team before you get to day 3. And now you're looking at a totally different tier of edge rushers that you maybe can't count on. I think it would make a ton of sense. So he's one of the top guys on the other side of the ball on offense. Kolton Miller is a guy I'm looking at. Trey Hendrickson's a name. I think George Pickens is kind of a name that maybe people should be thinking about. TJ Watt, even if he's not going to get his money. But I think if we're talking about guys who I really think could be moved, Kolton Miller from the Las Vegas Raiders. I think if they take Armand Membo in the top 10, maybe they like Kelvin Banks at left tackle. I wouldn't be shocked to see that. They take a guy like that. Kolton Miller's 29 years old. He wants new money. Came off surgery last year, had an up and down season. I think Kolton Miller is a guy that a team could look at him and be like, hey, we'll give up a 2nd round pick for Kolton Miller, bring him in. He's only 29. He's had good years. He's going to be fresh and not have a surgery to recover from. That's a realistic name that I think we could see moved. Teams who don't get a shot at maybe a left tackle that they like in the first 40 to 50 picks.
Yeah, this feels like a draft that's going to be a sweet spot for like day 3. You're going to see a handful of veterans move when the team that doesn't get the quarterback they wanted, they're going to give up a day 3 pick for Kirk Cousins. You know, like that kind of is an easy swap there. And I think another Las Vegas Raider I want to throw in there is Michael Mayer, the tight end. You know, after Brock Bowers was such a big revelation for them, they don't need. You know, I know it's tough because Michael Myers' value couldn't really get much lower than it is right now. He really hasn't done anything. So is it worth trying to rehabilitate his image a little bit as a player, like his value, and then trade him later in his rookie contract? Maybe if a team just says, hey, we missed out on the tight ends we wanted in this draft class, but we really liked Mayer a couple years ago, and we'll give you a 5th round pick or whatever it might be. Like, just cut bait and say, screw it, we don't need to worry about this anymore. Like, he's another name that's pretty high list. And yet it seems like the only one everyone's talking about is Jair Alexander from the Packers. And that to me feels like a more, all those really expensive guys are so much harder to trade around draft day, like him and Jalen Ramsey. And it's like, how do you find the cap space at this stage of the process? Whereas these guys on the rookie contracts that we were just talking about, those are easier to trade because you can put the money in the future instead of having to pay for it right now.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And look, the Kolton Miller situation, he's not quite on the rookie deal like Thibodeau or Jameson Williams, guys like that, but he's on the last year of his deal. There's no guaranteed money. A team can take him on and then totally restructure. Those are options for certain teams at certain levels. But again, your boy Q, my boy Q, our boy Q from Locked On Raiders, he doesn't really buy the Kolton Miller trade rumors.
There's reports all over the place about where the Raiders are going, right? I mean, Ashton Jeanty, he's been the guy where all roads have led to the Raiders with him forever, right? I mean, just about anyone who's got a mock draft has been saying Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders at number 6. Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda.com, he's reporting the Raiders are leaning Armand Membu, the offensive tackle out of Missouri. And it's just funny. I laugh when I see that. And then all of a sudden the Kolton Miller news is out there too. And everyone's like, oh, okay, Tony's onto something. They're going to go get Armand Membu and he's going to be drafted and they're going to move on from Kolton Miller. First of all, Membu was a right tackle in Missouri. That's where you should probably slide him in. And I'm okay if they take Membu. We've talked about him before. You can slide him in at the right tackle spot, put DJ Glaze in at the guard spot. JPJ is your center. You've got Kolton Miller. Then you've got guys like Dylan Parham that you can have compete for a guard spot. You also have guys like Alex Kappa, who you signed as a free agent, compete for a guard spot. Jordan Meredith, a guy you re-signed, so he can compete for a guard spot. Now all of a sudden you have a little bit of depth. I think that offensive line all of a sudden looks a lot better. So I don't know what direction they're going to go. I just know it's a week away from the draft, and believe nothing that you hear and only half of what you read.
It's hard to give better advice than that.
And I think especially with the Kolton Miller situation, like what kind of value you put on everything here. I mean, there's so many different moving parts here with guards, tackles. I mean, if Will Campbell's there, they could play him at guard. They could play him at tackle. They could play him at left tackle. People have talked about Membu playing guard as well. Like the Raiders are in a nice spot there. And that's why I said earlier, like the draft starts with the Raiders at 6 because they could go quarterback. They could go O-line. They could go running back. They could go just about any direction because they got a lot of work to do. And I think it's going to be fun to see how they handle that with these potential trade options as well with Mayer and Kolton Miller.
Yeah, and I think, look, you got to be a little careful with this right tackle can't project over. J.C. Latham from the Titans went top 7. said he's going to be left tackle, getting moved back to right tackle after one season. So stuff like that happens quite a bit, and these guys are in the position that they're in for a reason in college sometimes. So interesting decision that they have ahead. And look, never hurts to have two good offensive tackles. So maybe they just pay Kolton Miller and draft Membu, like you said, and that would make a lot of sense. But I love what Q had to say there. Believe only half of what you read, none of what you see, whatever he happened to say. It's probably best to just believe nothing. But with that in mind, tomorrow we're going to do some bold predictions on the Locked On NFL podcast, but that's going to do it for us today. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Lauren Cox. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.